Let's have an overview about clinical trials, dynamic capabilities, and quality management in pharmaceuticals. I'm going to talk about processes and areas connected to national healthcare systems. But I'm not going to speak about waiting times or political efficacy or innovations that might change the chronic state in which several different systems they are. If you ever heard of companies like Roche, Novartis, or Moderna, you must have associated these companies with areas like pharmacies, hospitals, or medicines as well. But have you ever considered that these companies they are also leaders in clinical research within areas like oncology? Probably not. Because much of what they do is based on developing clinical components that must be tested across several different phases of clinical trials. Consider that these same organizations, they suffer from the exact same diseases as our national healthcare systems, like legacy IT systems that needs to be integrated and developed, or corrupt databases, or software completely outdated to the modern times. And they are very far from capable of serving as solid foundations for advanced business intelligence systems, for example, or let alone AI agentic solutions for software development or medical diagnosis. And in the medical and pharmaceutical sector, the clinical operations they involve three areas of huge complexity. The first one, the clinical trials. Because in fields like oncology, up to 40% of the timelines across all clinical stages, they require very solid data management protocols, where critical processes involving patients in areas like testing or in terms of monitoring, they are sometimes forced to stall because our IT teams or biostatistical involved data scientists, they need to analyze the data that sometimes it's unrelated or requires extensive filtering or documentary analysis. Secondly, of course, the regulations, the compliance, and the auditing. And I dare to say that these processes, they probably are the most complex ones when we are speaking about human lives and automatically pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, and medical devices. But then we have as well the patient enrollments and the dropouts. Because during the clinical trial activity, with all the different phases and all the different steps, if something happens from a protocol perspective, or if there is any kind of negative reaction or any kind of deviation on the protocols, automatically we have situations that the patients they need to drop out. And these challenges they are very much connected, and even despite ongoing technology innovations, costs and timeframes they remain a major area of concern. But then we have several different issues regarding the cost of external data from companies managing these clinical trials. And these management companies, they are often located in different areas outside the European Union or the US, mainly because of operational regulations being more flexible and less complex as well, and less restrictive. Where sometimes when we are speaking about clinical trials, we might have situations where hospitals might be involving more than 400 patients embedded in what are very frequent several different steps that involves single stages of a clinical trial that can take up to 3 years to complete. And throughout all of these phases, we have the analysis of outcomes, insights, and results that should happen on a daily basis. So, mixing all of this, we have a massive pressure from company stakeholders, alongside pressures from governments and regulators like EMA in Europe and the FDA in the United States. So, how can we establish an agile framework for processes that, in a simultaneous way, involve human lives, machinery, data, or strict procedures and huge pressure for fast access to innovative medicines and treatments? So, how can we achieve this? We have a couple of areas that we have been focusing very much our attention. First one, quality management. Because the quality management within the clinical operations dictates how the systems they are implemented to successfully pass audits by regulators, medical control agencies, and the companies themselves. And if something fails, we are looking at fines that might exceed 4 to 5 million euros and a Google headline stating that a company X was non-compliant regarding human lives and the involved clinical trials. And as you can imagine, this is not good, right? It's not positive. Then there is another area where a lot has been happening, from processes automation or even developing new solutions that can really present different answers. Clinical trial management systems, or as we call it, CTMSs. Now, a single patient can generate 2 gigabytes of monitoring and clinical test data per day. And these might exclude all the safety and efficacy indicators for the patients, either placebo or active drug groups, where we must monitor the medical usage of all the medication or any kind of substances not connected with the medication, or monitoring as well any kind of adverse reactions. And then we have the pharmacovigilance and the quality control systems, because regulators and the organizations managing the doctors, nurses, researchers, and patients, they require as well constant data access and the management of the medical protocols as well. So can you imagine the risks here from a cybersecurity standpoint? They are several. So what we are talking about often comes down to managing all of these complex processes and the procedures, because these clinical teams frequently they struggle to understand, or sometimes the IT staff or vice versa, and these connects can result in almost 2 years of pure IT gridlock and endless debates over data protection and data privacy. And this is where dynamic capabilities come into play. Why? Because the corporate mission and the strategic vision of these companies often live isolated inside the minds and the excels of managers and operation directors. And the team on the ground, they have already developed the specific competencies and the capabilities needed to make the interpretation on the medical data and manage the clinical components. But they do not specifically care about corporate business visions or profit margins. But the return on investment for these clinical operations most of the times carries a price tag that in many cases can exceed 150 million euros. And a company can be destroyed by losing just 4 or 5 patients due to non-efficient processes. And in a similar way, a poorly managed team that resigns in mass scale or goes on a general strike can completely wipe out the research and development pipeline of a mid-sized firm like small, medium-sized biotechnology companies or large pharmaceutical companies. So basically, we are talking about the capabilities here of sensing opportunities, areas for process improvements, or identification of new molecules for clinical development. But next is having the capacity to mobilize the human and the financial resources as well, like seizing those capabilities and taking the advantage of the human and the financial resources in the best way as possible. And then finally, transform and making the reconfiguration of those resources. Operations, they never stop. And they keep moving forward while the process alignment, training, and the resource management function in perfect harmony across all the different departments and operational roles. So it's really fundamental to make the restructure of an hospital in the same way as we are developing the human capabilities, managing key performance indicators, but driving up efficiency levels as well. All of this seems impossible, but it's not. Believe me, it's feasible. But of course, requires modern, highly capable organizational management. Therefore, we are looking at specific dimensions spanning from strategy to structure, moving into processes, and then transitioning throughout technology and human resources development. We are talking about governance agility and organizational management. And this is not a simple system or an implementation methodology, because processes and project risks and waste management, they must all operate in a total synchronization, because it requires understanding the operational context, throughout the semantics of both processes and resources. And believe me, the research conducted in recent years regarding dynamic capabilities, it's very much promising. So basically, in short, means that shifting organizations and their resources in tandem with management, operational, and leadership capabilities, we need to explore highly compelling areas like the dynamic management and the leadership capabilities that directly can align with these new frameworks. Because in the realm of clinical operations, this bridges the gaps between raw costs, quality standards, and mainly having the alignment of strategic outcomes and models in terms of organizational efficacy. Picture a strategic consultant working for a company like Palantir. They can map out dynamic capabilities within data management or building out ontology and semantic layers. And from there, they can drive seizing and transformation reinforcement through interactive pilot cycles of concrete solutions, all while the organization navigates a continuous vortex of new technology, human, and functional competencies. And often the hurdles comes from external factors like mergers and acquisitions that can introduce significant impacts because of the management teams. We are talking about here about organizational transformations that can take 12 months and must typically run end to end across the entire structures.